Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth, and this is a Detroit broadcast, and I'm joined by my longtime colleague, George Eichorn. You and I have a history on this Sports Exchange, and we're going to add to that illustrious history tonight, right, George?
Yes, we are, Scott. Good to be back with you, coming live here from the Motor City, Detroit, Michigan.
And here we are out of South Florida. Our main office is in Coral Springs. And Damon Knight, the newest member of Detroit Sports Media, who's been a long-standing correspondent here at the South Florida Tribune, writes and comes on to broadcast occasionally. And, well, no doubt we're going to make you guys feel at home with what we're talking about. Tonight is what we call an all-Detroit show, and the theme of this one here is Statues in Detroit. So, you know, we want to honor our heroes any way that we can, and we will do so. So, Damon, why don't we talk about the statues with the Detroit Tigers at Comerica Park?
Yeah, so back in May 5th, 2000, the Detroit Tigers had a park, and they put all 6 statues of the most legendary Tigers you can probably think of. You got Al Kaline, Ty Cobb, Willie Horton, you have Charlie Gellinger, you have Hank Greenberg, all these great players, and, you know, it's amazing. Like, I went through the photos of these guys, and just, like, what they did throughout their career is like, historic. It's amazing what they've done. And then, you know, you think about, like, the Red Wings with Gordie Howe and Ted Lindsay and everybody else, and, you know, it's so cool to walk by a statue and just feel like, wow, this is awesome.
Well, I know,
so it's very historic.
I know Ty Cobb was before your time, but I think he's got one up there, too, taking somebody out, right? So,
what's that?
Ty Cobb,
yes.
George?
Yes.
And, of course, we have Al
Yes,
Kaline.
Ty Cobb is one of the ones.
And we got Al Kaline with the catch, right? So, you know, you talk about unique statues. Those are definitely 2 of the most unique ones that there are. And the Red Wings have a history of. So let's talk about any more. Do you see any more statues down the road for the Detroit Tigers? And when I think of one, maybe like Miguel Cabrera?
Yes, that'd be the first one to come to mind. You have Ivan Rodriguez. You know, Maglio Ordonez, in my opinion, sending us to the World Series in 2006 was pretty huge, and I think he's well-deserving. Maybe Justin Verlander when he retires. But, yeah, definitely like you just said with Miguel Cabrera, I could see. And, you know, you got another one, too, in Isaiah Thomas for the Detroit Pistons. I know he's not a Tiger, but he's supposed to get his on, you know, earlier or late next year. So that's going to be pretty exciting. And so, you know, you look at the Detroit Lions, they don't have one of Barry Sanders, and I'm sure he's deserving of that, too, as well.
Yeah, so let's go into more detail, George. What are your thoughts about what Damon said so far about the Tigers, obviously?
Well, I am. All due respect, Damon, I think you're showing your age, young man. You can't start with those kind of guys, Cabrera and Verlander, till you take care of my 2 favorites, the all-time double-play combination Detroit history. That's Alan Trammell and Sweet Lou Whitaker. Those statues have to go up, and so does Mr. Gray-haired old man, Sparky Anderson.
Yes, yes.
And, you know, the thing is, when you do these things, Mr. Illich started this, okay? When you do these things, where do you draw the line? Because now, since then, you have retired Jack Morris's number, you've retired Sparky Anderson's number, and Alan Trammell's number. So the fans are wondering, and the media, well, when is their statue going up then? See, that's the thing. When you start this thing, don't get me wrong, they're beautiful, but you can't do it for everybody. But 2 that I think should definitely get, even they could be together. There's a famous picture that somebody took of them, one of the sports photographers of Detroit, probably Mary Schrader, of Lou and Alan kind of leaning on each other at second base. And they put it on the cover of the Detroit Tigers yearbook and media guide. Do you remember that, Scott?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Trammell and Whitaker. That'd be great if they could do a statue, Damon, of those 2 guys together, maybe. It would be wonderful. You know, kind of like, you know, just hanging out together.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see it as you're walking in, just kind of like they're staring at you as you're coming in. I could totally see that. That'd be really, really cool. And, you know, yes, that they should honor those that become before, you know, your Verlanders.
And one more, of course, Damon, one more that you might have forgot, but just a reminder, Ernie Harwell, good friend of George Eichorn and Scott Morganroth.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about that. Ernie Harwell.
Ernie Harwell is a smaller statue, but it graces the plaza there where that big tiger is, so where your fans go in, the entrance there, the main entrance, I call it, to the ballpark. When you walk in those gates, that's where Ernie Harwell graces all of us. So I don't know. I mean, there's and like Damon said, there's so many that are deserving of it. It's just a matter of at least for the Tigers, how much can you afford to make? Do you have adequate room to put these? Will they be next to each other, or will they have to find out maybe someplace else at Comerica Park to start putting more statues?
Now, you talked about Steve Eiserman. Does he have one anywhere, or is that at Little Caesars?
When I did the research, his name did not come up. It was Terry Sawchuk, Gordie Howe, Ted Lindsay, and I believe the other one was
Alex Delvecchio, maybe?
Yes, Alex Delvecchio, yes.
So Steve Eiserman does not have one?
No, he does not have
one. No, I don't believe Eiserman, and the other one would be Nick Lidstrom's got to have one.
Yeah.
You can't forget Nick.
Yep, he was a great defenseman, probably the greatest defenseman of all time, in my opinion.
Okay.
Definitely.
So Damon, make a case for Isaiah Thomas.
And why he deserves it? Isaiah Thomas deserves it because of this. He deserves it because he brought 2 championships to the city of Detroit. You gotta remember that he had to go through the Los Angeles Lakers, who had, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, James Worthy, all these great legends, and he had to go through them just to get to a championship. Just to win a championship. And then you go through the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan.
Right.
You go to the Celtics with Larry Bird. And, his stat line was really, really good, just reading about it. And, he had 19.2 points a game. He had 3.6 rebounds, 9.3 assists. He shot 45% from the field, 29% from behind the arc, and 75.9% from the free throw line. That's outstanding. And he's 8th all-time, in assists with 9,061, throughout his glorious career. And so to accomplish that, you're worthy of a statue, in my opinion.
Go ahead, George.
Oh, no question about it. This is George chiming in. Damon, you're spot on, my friend. Isaiah Thomas deserves it. I don't know really the reason why the Pistons have been hesitant to do anything. It's kind of baffling because they love to retire jerseys, as you guys know. I mean, heck, even Chuck Daly and the owner Davidson and the general manager McCloskey have the jerseys, which they never wore, which have numbers up there for them. But I don't know why Davidson and Gores have been hesitant to make statues. It baffles my mind because it is a part. It's a great story you're doing, Damon, and it's a great part of sports legend. Yeah, to do statues. And, no argument here, guys. Isaiah has got to be the first one for the Pistons.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You would have thought, though, before Isaiah, though, George, that Dave Bing would have had one, of anybody.
Yeah, he was the mayor. He was the mayor of Detroit. Yeah, so he's accomplished a lot.
You're right, Scott. You're right. Absolutely. I'm sorry. You're right. Dave should have had one a long time ago. I agree.
Right. Well, I think that Dave Bing has meant a lot to that town, as we both know. I know where I'm at. In my studio, I have Dave Bing driving to the basket at Cobo Arena. So remember that photo with, I think, the referee trailing, driving to the basket?
Yes.
That's the one. So,
yep.
Dave Bing, but you're right.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I also...
The other ones that come to mind, my other ones that come to mind, Damon and Scott, are Pistons. Of course, a couple of their great legends in the NBA Hall of Fame are George Yardley, Bob Lanier, and then you start getting into guys like Joe Dumars, and do you go to Chauncey and Rip? I don't think so, but definitely I think Dumars deserves it, and, then you got the case for Lambier. I don't know. He was such a vital part of those championships, Bill Lambier.
I'm not so sure about Lambier. I know he's an important part. I think that when you retire a jersey, you retire it for great players. He was a very good player that did the dirty work. I mean, then if you're going to bring him into question, you might as well talk about Dennis Rodman. Now, you can make a case for Bob Lanier because back in the time when the Pistons, in the 70s, Bob Lanier and Dave Bing were a really great 1-2 punch. I love Bob Lanier.
Oh, yeah, he was a. Yeah, go ahead, Damon.
Sorry, go ahead. My bad, George. Go ahead.
No, Bob Lanier was a fantastic individual, too. He was the bridge between, when Bing was kind of getting older, and then they ended up trading Bing, remember, to, I believe, Washington.
Yeah, for Kevin Porter.
Right, and of course, Lanier ended up finishing his career as a Milwaukee Buck. But the best years of his career, I still think, were in Detroit. And you know what? Lanier is such a great citizen of the NBA. He's such a goodwill ambassador. He used to give out awards. He would travel to the cities, remember, Scott, to give out the trophies and awards with special NBA recognition kind of stuff.
I actually met Bob Lanier over at Market Square Arena in Indianapolis, and he spent some time with him. He's really a super nice guy. And, of course, he went to Milwaukee, and Don Nelson worked so hard to get him a championship, but they had to deal with the Boston Celtics at the time, and they just couldn't get over that hump. But, yeah, he had a pretty good career in Milwaukee as well. But, yeah, he's known for what he did in Detroit, without a doubt. So you talk about Isaiah Thomas. Anything both of you two want to add about Isaiah?
He was a great point guard.
Well,
he's considered arguably one of the best point guards to ever play the game.
Yeah, he was. And unfortunately, during this Michael Jordan series and the Bulls, some of those negative things have come back to light again. The bad blood between Jordan and Isaiah, and the dream team and the problems with Isaiah not shaking his hand, Jordan's hand in Detroit at the Palace when the Bulls defeated the Pistons. A lot of bad blood still, and obviously it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. I mean, they both are remarkable individuals, and they both had fantastic Hall of Fame careers, Jordan and Thomas. But Isaiah proved what he was worth in Detroit, and obviously deserved those championships. He was the captain of that team. He deserves that statue. And I know the statue thing is kind of hard now because you got the arena owned by the Ilitch family. So, Damon, you may want to mention that because they share the same arena, they'd have to come to some sort of agreement, right? The two owners as to where they're going to put the Piston statues.
Yes, exactly. And I noticed, walking through that, the LCA, that they had a cutoff point between Detroit, the Pistons, and then the Red Wings. And so, yeah, that would be something, food for thought to do that. And, they're probably still paying the debt for the stadium, and that's probably why the delay of statues is not being done and at a sooner time. But it'll eventually get done, and, yeah, definitely, I think that's something that should be considered.
Yeah, and the Pistons built that brand new practice facility, guys, up near the Boulevard in Detroit, which was near the Henry Ford Hospital. And the Pistons, but I don't think that's the appropriate place for statues. I mean, don't get me wrong; it's going to be used by the team and by fans and by people that are having healthcare issues because it is a healthcare facility in addition to being the Pistons headquarters. But I don't think that's due justice to Isaiah to have him there in the headquarters or practice facility. I think it has to be in, like you mentioned, Little Caesars Arena.
Well, they're paying rent there, so yeah, there's no question it should be there. I don't even know why this is even an issue to begin with. You're paying rent at that stadium. You gave up your own place, the Palace of Auburn Hills, that I still think was a joke that they ended up leaving that place, a brand new facility that they own free and clear. But I understand their decision to go downtown. But no, they're paying rent. They should get a statue, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Not over the new practice facility where nobody will see it anyways. Yeah, I mean, that to me makes absolutely no sense to not have it there. I imagine you're right, it'll eventually get worked out, for sure. I mean, they're co-tenants.
Yeah.
Like anything else. But
the bigger issue is, what about the Lions? You talk about the Lions and Barry Sanders. Oh, yeah, without a doubt. But the thing is, the Lions are another one that have shied away from any kind of statues. Now, they have a Ring of Honor. They don't call it that, but a Lions Hall of Fame,
right?
Where they display photographs of the players that are in their own Lions, Hall of Honor. But that's not the same as a statue. But the Lions are another one that the Ford family has refused to do any statues, right, Damon?
Yeah, it's embarrassing, really. You know what I mean? Like, Tom Brady, a year from now, maybe 3 years from now, is going to have his own statue at Foxborough. We need to have one for Barry because he did so much for us as an organization and brought so much relevance that he deserves that. Every time I go to a game, they mention his name. It is nothing but praise. Everybody praises him like he's God. And he should get a statue just as much as, like, Calvin Johnson should. And so, it's just embarrassing. It's a good step in the right direction, in my opinion.
Let me point one thing about the Isaiah for a moment, if I may. First of all, that Jordan documentary was all Michael Jordan had the opportunity to put whatever he wanted in there. So there's a lot of key points.
Fabrication.
Yeah. To me, that don't make it credible. I don't care. You have a one-sided documentary where Jordan controlled everything that went in there. So how much of the stuff that's actually being sent in there, how many things are actually have been omitted from the real, what really happened versus what he decided to put in there? You know what? I only watched 2 episodes, and I vowed to not watch it again. It seems like Michael Jordan's got a beef with everybody, whether it's Charles Barkley, Isaiah Thomas, you name it. He's got a beef for everybody. So I won't watch it.
That's a good point, Scott.
Yeah. So
that's a good point because you're right. He did control it, and shame on ESPN.
Right.
They allowed him so much editorial latitude in that because you are just getting his side of things, and it's not fair because there's 2 sides, as everybody knows, to every story.
Yeah, and you know what? As much as shaking hands, to me, is the sportsmanship like you do at the NHL. Don't tell me Larry Bird did it, and a lot of guys. See, back then in the NBA, you had teams that hated each other. They didn't fraternize with each other. You were in there, and to me, it was about. It was all out. I hate to use the word war, but that's exactly what it was. It really was. So I don't take any stock in what Jordan did. Again, I only watch it too because of the Detroit connections. Beyond that, forget it. Now, back to the Lions. There's a unique bird anyways. Once upon a time, where other NFL franchises had cheerleaders, the Detroit Lions, and I got to give them credit for it. I didn't think it was all that bad, used to bring in cheerleaders from local high schools. So I kind of liked it, but they were the last ones to bring on cheerleaders until they understood the marketing prowess for which you brought them on. So they've always done things a little bit different than most organizations. So it takes them a little while to catch on.
Yeah, it does. But getting back to of course, Barry Sanders, but don't forget there's some other great ones too, Damon and Scott. Joe Schmidt, the great Joe Schmidt.
Yes.
Bobby Lane, the last quarterback to lead them to world championships back in the 50s. Alex Karras is going to the Hall of Fame. Of course, they'll never make a statue for him. You mentioned Calvin Johnson, of course. There's But there are a lot of there are a lot of Lions that deserve it, and whether they decide to just do one, maybe and stop there. I'm not opposed to that idea because, like you said earlier, Damon, of course, Barry deserves it more than anyone.
Oh yeah, for sure. You look at the guy's talent alone, and you can't pass up on him. It's pretty hard not to.
Yeah, I mean,
correct. And
Bobby Lane for sure. I mean, he won a championship for Pete's sake.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they haven't seen any of those in a while. Quite a while.
Yale Larry. Yeah, there's an old guy named Yale Larry who was one of the greatest Lion players of all time. but again, you can go on and on. I mean, they're not going to do that. Obviously, I don't think they're going to do as many statues as the Illiches did, but I'm certainly would be very pleased to see a Sanders statue go up. That would be great. Wow. And who knows? Maybe there'll be one someday from Matthew Stafford. Who knows?
There you go. Well, first of all, Calvin Johnson's not getting a statue because the bridges are burned anyhow, so I would find it hard to think that they would do anything with him.
Oh yeah. It's just the constant rants about how terrible we are, and everything that he's ever said post career. Yeah, he kind of burned all of his bridges.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, think about it. Sergei Fedorov is a guy who still hasn't had his number retired. Do I think he deserves his number retired? Yeah, but boy, when you leave out the way he did, there's a lot of cold feelings there, and I'll see whether or not Steve Yzerman elects to go ahead and retire number 91. I think he deserves to, but there comes a time when you leave on such abrupt terms, organizations don't think too highly of it, and we'll see whether or not anything will be done with Fedorov. I don't know. That remains to be seen.
Well, you're right, Scott, but you know what? I look at the case of Lance Parrish. Lance Parrish left the Tigers under some very salty terms as well, as you recall, when he took that big deal, I believe, with the Phillies, I think it was.
Yeah.
But look at years later now. Lance Parrish has been a valuable member of that Tigers farm system now as a coach and a manager, and the big league level. He was even a coach for a year or two under Trammell. But, I think that at some point the Red Wings, and like you said, hopefully Yzerman will be the key to that decision, because I don't know if Mrs. Illich maybe is the one that might be even holding that up, retiring Sergei's number. But like I said, I look at the Lance Parrish example, and I'm sure there's many others in other organizations that, let bygone be bygone and welcome the guy back sometime. Come on.
Well, but when you talk about Lance Parrish, okay, and you look at that 84 team, was he the fourth or fifth best player on that team? And would the fourth or fifth best player on that team get a jersey retired? Let alone a statue.
No, I'm not saying he should be. No, I'm not saying a jersey retirement for Parrish. I'm just comparing him to being welcomed back into the organization after there was bad blood when he left.
Well,
but no, I would not.
Baseball's a different breed, though. It really is. When you leave a team in time, I mean, listen, Kirk Gibson left for the Dodgers, and as time went on, he was welcomed back in a lot of ways with the Tigers. He left for the Dodgers. So how did that work out? It just depends, I think, probably on the player, too, doesn't it, George?
Yeah, it does. You're right. Baseball is probably the most accommodating because it's so complex. I mean, with all the farm systems and all the broadcast teams you got and the jobs, there's so many opportunities, for people to come back to their previous organizations, like you said, Scott, as a scout, as a coach, as a manager, as a broadcaster. So, that's a good point. That in baseball, Gibson's another one. He left to go to the Dodgers, but Tigers certainly welcomed him back later on, didn't they?
Yeah, but the one thing about baseball, you can never have enough good baseball minds in an organization. You really can't. And if they think a lot of these fellows had great baseball minds, then you know what? Yeah, you bring them back at some point when their career's over with. You really do. I mean, eventually we were glad that Sparky Anderson had his number retired. It took a while for that to happen. So I think it all depends on the person, to be honest with you. What do you think, Damon?
I agree.
Yes, most certainly. Yeah, whatever history comes across our minds, you should look at the people that laid the groundwork for your organization, gave relevance, and to honor them would be by retiring their number or giving them a statue, something to remind generations of past heroes. That's my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
So, we've talked about Barry Sanders. Okay, I think he's number one. But can you actually see at some point the Lions ever... I don't know. There's certain organizations that you just wonder about whether they believe in it or they're just so content with their Lions Hall of Fame. That's what I'm mind-boggled about.
Well, they do have an alumni gathering every year, okay? So the players do come back. Last year, it was a little bit more elaborate because the 100th anniversary of the NFL. But, of course, I look forward to watching it during halftime from the press box. Last year was really good because they brought back, I think, more came back last year than normally. But they do have an alumni weekend, which our friend Bill Keenest and other members of the organization help organize, I'm sure. So all I'm saying is that I wouldn't say the Lions don't honor their past, And Herman Moore is another one that's been very active. Well, of course, Lomas Brown and Lem Barney. Those guys have been active in the community for many, many years in Detroit, promoting football and promoting kids' health and things like that. So I think the Lions, they do it in a different way. Some teams go more out, like you said, with the statues and stuff. But the Lions seem to be doing it their own way, and they do a lot of community kind of stuff, which is good to get back to the community.
Well,
Damon?
Go ahead,
Yes.
Damon.
Yeah. And it's kind of like the Yankees where they don't put names on the back of, players' jerseys. It's kind of like that to me, where nobody's more important than the other person is. And I look at it that way. But you have to honor legends like him. Like, it has to have some relevance with in the stadium. And, it's just a smack in the face kind of,
Yeah, well, that's true. Every teams do things. And you're right. Again, the Lions do things, and I can appreciate it. It's just ironic, though, that when you have a special player like a Barry Sanders, who was the identity of your franchise and actually on a team that won their last playoff game, compared to Bobby Lane, he's one of those extraordinary individuals that, he was even-keeled. He did things the right way. He was not a showman. And Barry Sanders, in fact, I had the opportunity during the Super Bowl. It was great to be able to take a photo with Barry over at Radio Row. And Barry, to me, is just Barry. What can you say?
Yes, yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, Steve Eiserman, again, you say you don't know if he has a statue yet, George?
No, I can't confirm that either. I don't believe so. I don't remember it, but I do remember when his jersey was retired, but I don't remember the statue thing.
That's true. Well, everybody knows what Steve Eiserman's meant to that area. Gordie Howe, as you alluded to as well. And, yeah, I could see Miguel Cabrera perhaps getting one down the road, too. I really can. But, again, the Tigers, at least they are more ambitious on the statue front than a lot of the other teams are in that market. Anything else you both want to add to the subject at all? Damon?
No, not that I can think of, no.
All right, so what we're going to do here is, as we do on every broadcast, just so you know, you're listening to the Sports Exchange here on the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network, and we're going to let Damon Knight let people know how they can get a hold of him.
Yes, you can find my name on Facebook, Damon Knight, DamonKnight. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram. My Twitter handle is @Damon with capital DKN 1993. And I'm also on the South Florida Tribune. Just type my name in the search bar and you'll find all my latest and greatest stories.
George, how can people get a hold of you other than the fact that you're you and me have been colleagues for the better part of 40 years?
Yes, we sure have been. I'm on Facebook, George Eichorn, EICHORN. I'm on, not on Instagram yet. I'm on Twitter, and I contribute as well to this outstanding media agglomeration here that Scott and Candy and Damon work for. So you can find me and some of my stuff too published there as well.
Right, and how can they get a hold of you on Twitter? Do you have your Twitter name?
Oh, yeah. Twitter is DSBA2. That's Detroit Sports Broadcasters Association, and then the number 2. DSBA2 is my Twitter handle. Thanks, Scott, for mentioning that.
Oh, you're welcome. And also here on the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network, we have a total of 6 shows. You are listening to the Sports Exchange tonight, but we have the South Florida Tribune Podcast, which is a non-sports show, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, which is strictly dedicated to baseball. We have The Real and the Rare with Xavier McKnight, one of the finest young guys out there and an up-and-coming broadcaster or whatnot. Fantasy football with myself and Ryan Skolrud, and, of course, Motorman and Rude Dog with Rudy Reyes. The way to get a hold of us, you can follow us on Twitter, Scoop, SCOOP 33333. That's 5 of them, in case you're counting. And at Tribune South, we're on Facebook at South Florida Tribune. Like us, and that'll get you the updates. Well, we did take the Instagram plunge. Same name, South Florida Tribune gets it done. I also have a YouTube channel for South Florida Tribune, so go ahead and subscribe to that for no cost. Our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. Our email is southfloridatribune@gmail.com in case you need to get a hold of us. And I can be found on LinkedIn at Scott Morganroth as well. You can find these broadcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, CastBox, Podcast Addict, Deezer, and Podchaser. Should point out that all three of us happen to be members of the Detroit Sports Media, formerly known as the Detroit Sports Broadcasters Association, or an organization that's been around a long, long time, right, George? Tell everybody how much of an active role you've been with the DSPA/.
Well, yes. The Detroit Sports Broadcast Association was started under the late Ty Tyson, the original broadcast voice of the Detroit Tigers and University of Michigan football. Ty Tyson started the organization back in the 40s because he was plain out sick and tired of the secondhand treatment that broadcasters were receiving at old Navin Field and then Brick Stadium. So Ty Tyson and a bunch of radio guys and television was just starting, got together and formed this organization and tried to battle for their own rights, the rights to get into the locker room, the rights to have not second-class seating in the press box, and all kinds of things. So Ty Tyson started the organization. The organization has continued on for all these many, many years, over 70 years now. And Jennifer Hammond, the Channel 2 Detroit broadcaster and not play-by-play, but she's a sideline reporter for a lot of Lions games. Jennifer Hammond is the current president of the organization. It has been renamed, though, Scott and Damon, to Detroit Sports Media Association, and that's to acknowledge the people that work in sports are not only on the air, but our producers, our bloggers, our podcast guys and gals, our sideline reporters, our production staff, our sports photographers are involved in sports marketing and sports associations. So the organization is so much bigger than what it started out as because it had a very narrow focus, if you will, back when Tyson started it in the 40s. So, Detroit Sports Media Association is the new name. That's DSMA, and they are at DetroitSportsMedia.com. And you'll find some interesting articles there.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah.
No, you'll find some interesting articles and also membership application for those that qualify for sports media coverage, and they would like to join the association. The dues are $60 per year.
Now, I've enjoyed working with a lot of the presidents because myself, like you, I've been in the organization a long time, but three presidents that I've really, truly enjoyed working with are Jim Brandstatter. Brandstatter and I have been good friends for a long time. Another one that stands out to me is Ken Cal, the Red Wings broadcaster. I love seeing Ken when he comes down to Florida every year. And, of course, Jennifer Hammond was, before she came in there, Trevor Thompson. You want to talk about one of the nicest guys on the planet, Trevor Thompson is definitely one. But all three of the people that I mentioned are nothing short of first-class individuals. It seems like every time I've gotten sick, Trevor Thompson's always asking me he's sending me prayers all the time when I've been in the hospital. And unfortunately, in recent years, I've been in there more often. But don't get me wrong, all the other presidents have been great, but these are the three that stand out for me. And, of course, Jennifer is new. I've worked with her in the past, but I've yet to see her body of work with Detroit Sports Media, but I got to believe that Jennifer will bring in some fresh ideas, and I'm sure she'll do what she can to keep the tradition of this organization going strong. But those other three people, Brandstatter, Cal, and Thompson, God love them. They're truly first-class individuals for sure. So, but meanwhile,
very, very well said, Scott. Very well said.
Thank you. So, well, once again, George, it's always great having you on the Sports Exchange. And Damon, keep up the good work with the South Florida Tribune. But meanwhile, we should also point out before we go off the air that we hope that we've been able to go ahead and provide you with some good entertainment tonight. I know that these are very stressful times during the pandemic crisis. We can only hope that everybody stays home, stays safe. Kudos to our first responders, and maintain social distancing. We know that this is a dilemma that nobody saw coming, but we have to keep the faith and stay together and hope at some point or another that this situation gets resolved. But we have to show a lot of resolve here for sure, because right now that's all we've got to work on. So once again, on behalf of my longtime colleague, George Eichorn, Damon Knight, this is Scott Morgan from Motor City Manmouth, hoping that you enjoyed our broadcast tonight, and we will catch you on the next episode of the Sports Exchange. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Scoop. It was a pleasure. Thank you, George. Yep. Bye.
Good night. Thank you.
Yep.